Hello, how's everybody doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank
Wonderful.
you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi Perry. Hi, Bobby. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We'll get started here in a minute. Let's give people a minute or so to transition from their other meeting, if they had one, or their lunch, I guess. We have a busy agenda today on our call. Um, yeah. Thank you, Rebecca, for I added you last minute to the agenda, so thank you. Okay. I think we're pretty much good. Is there anybody coming in, Melissa, still?
Not that I can see. Oh, there's a couple more. I'm going to add more. I'll keep watching it.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for the April Mobility and Access Coalition. Can everybody hear me and see the slides? Perfect. Okay, next slide. So I know that we all know how to do this, but just a reminder on the Zoom features. Next slide. You can join from your browser or the app, and you can join the call. You can call into the meeting as well if you lose internet access. Next slide. When you registered for the meeting, you should have gotten a one tap number. So if you lose internet connection, go ahead and click on that and you can listen into the discussions today. And just a couple of things that I think we know, please put yourself on mute unless you are speaking, and feel free to unmute yourself and speak during the meeting. We encourage you to show your video or to start your video so that people can see you when communicating. It just makes communication a little bit easier. You can go ahead and enter your name and organization in the chat now so that we know. It helps us with taking minutes and knowing who's involved or who attended the meeting. And you can go ahead and just put that in the chat. Next slide. Great. And so another thing that we've recently been encouraging people to do is you can turn on closed captioning by clicking on the more ellipsis link, and then up at the top you'll see show captions. And so that's available to anybody who needs closed captioning. Next slide. And just a reminder that the Mobility and Access Coalition focuses on transportation equity. We believe that transportation is a vital part in accessing your opportunity, having good quality of life, and meeting your basic needs. We really want to make sure that people can get to safe and thriving levels of self-sufficiency through their transportation choices, multimodal transportation choices. Next slide. We have a pretty full agenda today. I went ahead and took off the case study just because we had a couple of last minute additions to the agenda. So thank you very much for joining us, but we're going to go through a list of updates and we'll do these one by one on the slides. Next slide. And then after the updates, we will have a presentation by Dr. Darcy Kitching, and she'll be able to talk to us about her research. So looking forward to learning all about that. Next slide. Okay, so I want to introduce a graduate student that we've been working with for, I don't know, the last 4 months, Perry, and she's working on conducting an employer survey for an equity analysis. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Perry.
Hi there. As Angel said, my name is Perry Molnar, and I'm a student at CU Denver. So we're conducting an equity analysis, as she said as well. And we're trying to find out from businesses and nonprofits and schools and other groups in the county what barriers they face in taking advantage of the subsidy program. So it would be super, super helpful if you could take a couple minutes just to take the survey. And then I can incorporate that into my research and just be able to provide more data for the project and just how we can help more businesses and places take advantage of this really awesome resource. So yeah, I don't know if we have time for questions, but yeah, if there's anything else you would like to know,
Yeah.
let me know.
We have a couple minutes for questions. I went ahead and put the survey links in the chat. So can you tell us a little bit about the purpose of the survey?
Yeah. So basically there's been a little bit of a lag in people being able to use the subsidy program. The county currently will provide a 60% subsidy for the first year using the EcoPass, the business EcoPass, and then 30% off for the second year. So we're trying to find out, especially how we can help minority and women-owned businesses use this resource.
Great. Wonderful. Anybody have any questions for Perry? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for collecting all this data. We will hopefully invite her back to to share results at some point. So, oh, there is a question. How long is the survey up to, and who are your target populations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be up until this Friday at midnight. And our target populations, we're definitely trying to ask minority-owned and women-owned businesses, as I said, but really any data that we can collect at this point is super helpful, just to find out like who the program is currently serving and who we could potentially serve in the future. And then just trying to get a lot of businesses from different areas in the county as well, trying to get, yeah, a whole spread.
And nonprofits. So Liz
Yeah.
works with a lot of nonprofits. So I think any nonprofit employers are also encouraged to take the survey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Great.
unfortunately have to go back to work, but thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, next slide. So I just want to announce that CASTA, which is the Colorado Association of Transit Agencies, they host a spring conference generally along the Front Range and a fall conference, usually in resort areas in the mountains. And they are hosting their spring CASTA conference here in Boulder. There is an option for our local coordinating council to register just to attend the Mobility Summit, which will be free for any of the local coordinating council members. I'll go ahead and send you a link to how to register, and it has at the bottom there's some instructions on how to sign up for what's called the Mobility Summit. So I'll send an email out specifically, but it'll be a great opportunity for us to connect with other local coordinating councils from around the region and the state. And really just there's a couple of different panel discussions. Also, there'll be lunch will be provided as well. So just really looking forward to the day. And let me know if you have any questions or any problems registering for CASTA. Additionally, there will be more regular CASTA sessions the afternoon of May 12th through the morning of May 15th. So it's a great opportunity to connect with transit professionals from across the state. Any other questions on the CASTA conference? No? I'll go ahead and put the link to to check out the registration in the chat. Okay. Next slide. This is an update that I'm giving for Sarah, so she's out today. I think that Adriana wanted a little bit of an overview of how the drop-in sessions went. So for those of you who attend regularly, we hosted a lunch and learn in January to basically hear directly from RTD and Denver Human Services about how people could sign up for RTD Live. with the intent of hopefully doing targeted outreach to people with disabilities, because with the changes to the Access on Demand service, where people have to pay the $4.50 upfront, the Uber and Lyft trips were becoming inaccessible to a lot of people on fixed incomes. So in February and March, we hosted 2 different drop-in sessions with the Center for People with Disabilities. The February session was at the Boulder location, and I see Jen's on the call. Jen was able to attend that one. And we didn't have a lot of people, members of the public, show up to that one. We had Jen, who's an ambassador, and one other person that we helped sign up. But there were also resource navigators from the Center for People with Disabilities there. And so it was helpful for them to understand the process. Then in March, we had a drop-in session at the Longmont CPWD location, and I believe we helped about 6 people there. 1 or 2 of them were also caseworkers or stakeholders. But in general, I think we've had really positive results from the surveys that people took afterwards. And at this point, we will just be referring people to the Denver Human Services points of contact. So for those of you who weren't able to attend any of these, if people need assistance signing up for Live, they can call Denver Human Services. If they don't have access to the internet, they can do a phone application. They could do a virtual application. And I see that Sasha has her hand up. So there's a bunch of different options that we'll send out afterwards to let you know what you can do if you have clients that need to sign up. Yes, Sasha?
Sorry, yeah. Hi, this is Sasha. I'm actually the new community organizer at the Center for People with
Oh,
Disabilities.
wonderful.
And so I was at this event last month, and it was
Oh,
definitely
wonderful.
great because we had DHS, Mobility for All, and RTD there. So for the consumers that did come and the community members that did come, it was great because they could get multiple services,
Mhm.
and support for multiple services at once too.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Good to put a face to a name. I've heard your name around, but yeah, it's great. And I think that just in general, there's going to be a continued effort to raise awareness of the LIVE program, in particular with the disability community of people who use Access-a-Ride, perhaps. But any other questions or comments? Okay. A big kudos to Sarah Lee for leading this effort. She did a wonderful job. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Nick Aguilera.
Hi, everyone. Nick Aguilera, Bilingual Community Outreach and Engagement Coordinator with Mobility for All. We have a few upcoming resource fairs and events that we're excited to be at. So we wanted to share that news with you all. We are going to be at the Cinco de Mayo Celebration and Resource Fair in the city of Longmont on May 2nd. Angela, I didn't prepare the link to drop in the chat, but I will after I speak. And everybody, I encourage you all to attend, celebrate Cinco de Mayo, connect with the Latino community, and enjoy a wonderful day. Please stop by the Mobility for All tent, where we'll have resources about mobility options to help people get around Boulder County. And Angel, Sarah, and our Mobility for All team are also going to be showing up at the St. Vrain Valley Special Education Resource Fair. Angel has also put that link in the chat for everybody. And Angel, I didn't prepare the dates right before I jumped on the call. So everybody, I will find that and put it in the chat as well. But please reach out to us if you have any questions about that. Please, feel free to show up and attend. I also am working closely with our team to make sure that all of these are available in our Mobility for All newsletter that was just sent out this month. And they are going to be up on our website by the end of this week.
Great, thank you, Nick. And just a tip, Cinco de Mayo is not on the 5th of May, so I believe it's Saturday. I believe
Saturday, May 2nd.
Yeah, the 2nd this year. And it's really a lively event. So thank you very much, Nick, for that. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine for the next update. You're on mute, Elaine.
I think I double clicked. Sorry about that. But hello, everyone, and thanks, Angel, and everyone. I wanted to point out that every year Dr. Cog recognizes commuters of the year, and the deadline is coming up on Friday. There are 3 great categories. One is business champion. So if you know a business where people are just really good about getting into the office with transit, walking, busing, biking, whatever, that balance with being able to telework as well, all of those count for these. We also there's another category called Rising Star. So if you know someone who is sort of new to commuting to work, like biking, or have just found how convenient the bus is, that's a great category. And Commuter of the Year. It's been a few years since Boulder's actually been host of the Commuter of the Year. So I would love to see that happen again. So just share this with friends. It really does not take very long to fill out the submissions. You can have a few images if you wanted to share, but for, telling a good story is always meaningful. And there's then a fun award celebration that will come on a little ways down the road. So I encourage nominations, getting some good winners, and maybe we'll see you all down there.
Wonderful. Has anybody been nominated or attended recently, Elaine, that you want to? I know that we attended, but not for the Way to Go Awards last year.
Yeah, well, it was last year, right? That we had submitted the University of Colorado, and Clark Ryder was able to accept for all the innovative programs that CU is doing, that they've got some of the most successful Vanpool programs of the year. They also, by campus offering the pass for students as well as faculty. It really makes a difference for something like that. I see Audrey has her hand up. I bet she has some more information.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Elaine. Commuting Solutions did submit a couple of folks from the Northwest region for the Way to Go Commuter Award, including Evan with Front Range Community College up in Longmont. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks. And I think last year for the other MetroVision awards, like Boulder County did pretty well. Like City of Longmont won, Boulder County Housing Authority won, Mobility for All won an award. So it's really a great opportunity to connect with people all over the region. Kathleen Brackey was also recognized for long contribution to the transportation industry. So it's a great opportunity. So if you know of anybody, please submit them. Audrey, your
it's
hand's still
always
up. I don't know if
inspiring,
you.
the stories that you hear from the people who win are always very inspiring. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Elaine. Next slide. Okay, Steph has an update for the Dr. Mac May meeting.
Hello, yeah. So Dr. Mac will be hosting our next, it'll be our member meeting, but even if you're not a Dr. Mac member, everyone is welcome to attend. We will be hosting our member meeting on May 5th virtually from 1:30 to 3 p.m. on Zoom. We'll be hearing from some of our newly added transportation providers, as well as some of our existing transit providers in the area, get some updates on their services. And yeah, it's always just a good opportunity to network with folks in your county and other counties as well, within the transit community and beyond. So all are welcome to attend. Thank you, Angel, for putting the link to that in the chat. And yeah, hope to see you all there.
Great. Any questions for Stephanie about the Dr. Mac meeting? Okay. Thank you, Steph. I appreciate it. Okay, next slide. We'll be talking about BVSD Bike and Roll to School Day. Was Amy able to hop on?
Yes,
Oh,
I am
great.
here.
Wonderful to see your face.
Yes. Oh, thank you. So we'll be hosting, BVSD will be hosting Bike to School Day next Wednesday, April 22nd. We like to keep everybody on their toes and celebrate a little bit earlier than the rest of the country. We've always kind of traditionally tried to align with Earth Day, and this year our day falls exactly on Earth Day. So that's exciting. So here's our flyer. So we've got 24 schools signed up to participate, various events, and a couple of highlights is, so Crestview Elementary is going to be celebrating the grand opening of the underpass on 19th Street there, right by their school. So that's going to be a really exciting and just wonderful, safe way for kids to get to school. So we'll be out there celebrating that. And then we'll also be celebrating all the improvements on 19th, the new bike lanes. So right into Centennial, and at Centennial Middle School, we're gonna have our first ever school street. So we're just gonna shut down just the one block of Norwood in front of the school to cars and make it safe and comfortable for kids to bike and walk. And then Officer Mitch and I, Officer Mitch from the city of Boulder, will be visiting PE classes all day, giving short presentations about e-bike and e-moto education. So we'll be doing that. And then the next night, there's a parent night that I'll be doing the same thing at. And then another wonderful thing happening is Manhattan Middle School students will be giving feedback on the preliminary design of the new infrastructure projects through a Safe Routes to School grant that will be happening on Manhattan Drive. And then also it's like bike rodeo season, so we will have lots of bike rodeos around the district. So lots and lots of fun stuff going on.
That sounds great. I know that Melissa's planning on attending. Melissa, I don't know if you want to chime in at all, add anything?
Yeah, I think Nick and I are still trying to figure out how we're gonna be going, but we are gonna be there. We just don't know in what capacity yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be a great opportunity to
Yeah.
collaborate. So
I'm excited.
yeah, it's always fun to see the excitement around Bike to School, Bike and Roll to School Day. But I always get them confused because you swap the name like for the fall, right? I forget, it's like Walk and
Yeah, the
Bike
fall
to
is
School.
Walk and Roll, and the spring is Bike and Roll.
Yeah.
So but yeah, we like to celebrate twice a year.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next slide. Okay, Audrey, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the Front Range Passenger Rail Town Hall updates. I know there's one tonight, so we're excited to see you there, but I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, thank you for a couple minutes of time on the agenda. So, there is a lot of momentum regarding passenger rail service in the Front Range. I'm sure you've seen a lot of media coverage regarding a series of town halls that are happening from Fort Collins all the way to Pueblo to really engage the public and to educate them about the future of rail along this interregional corridor. And as part of the collaboration to make this possible, Commuting Solutions is hosting 3 town halls in our Northwest region. We held one last week in Longmont. Tonight we're in Boulder. And on the 29th, we'll be in Westminster. And there's just a lot of momentum and excitement around rail. You may have seen the naming contest and the selection of the name COCO, or Colorado Connector, that was announced last week. And the district had 25,000 people submit a naming recommendation. So, we're hearing that people, are really excited about the prospect of rail, that there's, yes, a lot of questions that still need to be resolved, but people are eager to learn more. So if you haven't attended or engaged, we encourage you to do so. And more to come in the next few months as the Front Range Passenger Rail District discusses and considers potentially going to the ballot this November. Thank you. Oh, you're muted, Angel.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Audrey about the events? I know that Cami was able to attend last weeks, and it was really well attended. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. Okay, it's great to see all the momentum around progressing the rail. Thank you, Audrey, for joining us and giving the update.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. Next slide. Okay, I'm not sure if Maya was able to attend today. So I can go ahead and give this one. So I just wanted to let you all know that Maya has been working on our 2024 annual report. And I'll go ahead and put the link to the English and the Spanish in the chat. It was a great opportunity. This is the first time that we've done like a formal annual report, but really it's an opportunity for us to just acknowledge like some of the work that we've been doing around accessibility and what we're focusing on in 2024. Additionally, as part of that, Maya worked on developing one-pagers for a lot of our different programs that we have. And she developed one for the Mobility and Access Coalition, which I would love to share with you. So that's our one-pager for the Mobility and Access Coalition. If you want to go ahead and save that, that'd be great. It basically just talks about what some of our achievements have been over the years and like who should attend if they're inclined or want to focus on equitable transportation in Boulder County. So it's really an opportunity for our current members or current people who attend to be able to have something to give people when they ask like what's going on at the MAC or like why should I join the MAC? So it's been really great to see Maya's products on this, but we'll be sending out some of the one-pagers for our different programs in our newsletters just over the months. So looking forward to like celebrating some of those accomplishments of the staff. Any questions about the annual report or the one-pager? No? Okay, wonderful. Next slide. Okay, did Gabriel, was he able to join us today on service updates? I don't think.
I do not see Gabriel in the list of participants.
Okay, thanks. Just a reminder that the spring service change or the May service changes are coming up for June. I mean, they do the final push for June. So I put the link in the chat. I don't think that there's any that are too earth-shattering for our county. Mostly it's changing to the summer schedule to accommodate students from CU and the school districts being out for the summer. But go ahead and take a look at those changes. And if you have any questions, I think that they're still accepting some feedback. Thank you.
Angel, that link hasn't come through to the group chat yet.
It hasn't. It should say
At least
RT
from-
service
at least from-
changes. Oh, thank you. I noticed what I was doing. I chatted Steph, and so she got all of my links for the last little bit. There we go. Thank you, Nick, for speaking up. I appreciate it. Okay. There we go. Let me know if you have any questions on the annual report 2024 now that you've actually seen it in the one pager. Next slide. Great. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Seiden, and she's going to share her screen, Joseph, so you can go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay. Just a minute. There you go. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Rebecca Seiden. I am one of the grant managers for Boulder County. I run the IDD Mill Levy program, and there is an upcoming training that we're inviting our partners to learn more about how we are operationalizing Policy 1.06. And so in January of last year, the grant managers started meeting to begin to organize our efforts surrounding operationalizing Policy 1.06 in grant making, which was directed by another policy, which is 9.02. So the following were identified, and we have completed these as priorities. There's an evaluation criteria that includes a racial equity evaluation criterion in grant applications, and it creates a list of racial equity questions that can be used in applications. So when partners are applying for grants within Boulder County, in their application, there are certain racial equity questions that we are requiring that be answered. We also did create an external web page where you can go to one place fits all to see what all the grant opportunities are for Boulder County at one time, and I have included that link. Also, the grant managers went through a train the trainer training with Carrie Inashita from the County Office of Racial Equity and Kim Strong in order to train people who will be evaluating those grant applications. The fourth priority is an information sharing training with the community and applicants on why we are aligning our grant awards with Policy 1.06 and county values. That is coming up on April 29th from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And it's going to be with Commissioner Lochamin as the featured speaker. There will be a panel that includes Commissioner Lochamin, Carrie Inashito, and also department heads to discuss how their grant programs align with the county racial equity values. I just wanted to, this is our policy 1.06. It's fully inclusive. And you can see at the top, in Boulder County, race matters. And we center race in our equity work because we know historically and currently, race is the biggest predictor of disproportionate outcomes and disparities in the United States of America. Good government is impossible without racial equity. And as you'll see also down in red, another very important statement by the county. As a government institution, it is our moral responsibility to interrupt institutional racism, which manifests through racist laws, policies, practices, and behaviors. In order to advance racial equity, we must practice transformational racial equity within our own governmental organization and within ourselves. This is the policy that really mandated us to look at how we were going to operationalize this within our grant program. So as you can see, it really does require us to implement Policy 1.06 when awarding grant funds. And this is what we've been working on for the last year and a half. Why do we do this? Well, because it spurs economic development in underserved communities. And also it addresses the longstanding systemic inequities that locked minority and also women-owned business enterprises out of opportunities. So why is this important? Boulder County Policy 1.06 establishes racial equity as a strategic priority, and it requires the county to actively interrupt that systemic institutionalized racism. It mandates that all offices and departments awarding grants fully implement this policy when distributing funds. The policy emphasizes that race remains the strongest predictor of disparities in the U.S. and therefore must be centered in county equity work. So why does it matter in grant making? Race continues to be the strongest predictor of disparities in the United States. We need to apply a racial equity lens to help ensure that grants support communities that have historically faced these barriers to resources and opportunities. By implementing Policy 1.06, we promote fair access to county funding, and we also strengthen the effectiveness of programs serving diverse populations. The policy encourages all of our departments to examine who benefits from grant resources, identifying barriers, and adjusting practices to create more equitable outcomes. So this is the training that is coming up. You can see links for attending. It is an in-person training, but also online through Zoom or by phone. It is called Aligning Boulder County's Racial Equity Values with Local Grant Programs. It is Wednesday, April 29th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. The in-person location is at the Boulder County Southeast Hub. You do need to register to attend. It's not required, but it is encouraged just so that we have planning purposes on how many people will be attending. And then there are links within this slide in order to register. So really, if anybody is out there that is interested in applying for grants in the future, they should come to this training. I encourage it. I think that you'll get a lot of knowledge about why we are operationalizing this policy within Boulder County. And for one that has been working on it for the last year and a half, I'm very excited by this training and really looking forward to continuing this work in Boulder County. Thank you.
Any questions for Rebecca about the racial equity training? I can kick us off with a question, Rebecca. So I know that grant coordinators or grant people who work in grants across the county were involved in this process. Can you give us a little snapshot of like which departments helped take part in this new policy change?
It's actually all departments. There's many grants within Boulder County. So we had Parks and Recreation, we had the climate control. So if you're interested, actually, if you go to that county page of grants, you will see all the grants that are available. It updates on there with information, and you can see all the grants that are involved. It's a very long list of grant managers that were involved on this across the county.
Yeah, that's great. So Suprant wanted to know if they could have the links. So the links are included in the chat, but I can send them out afterwards as well. Just because I know that, you know, policy 1.06 is really meaty and it's good to dig into that a little bit to understand. And I also just wanted to say that racial equity really fits into the commissioner's strategic priorities. I'll go ahead and share the strategic priorities. So in particular, good governance, they really believe that racial equity is part of good governance. And there's a link to the 2025 progress report on the strategic priorities. So if you want to dig into that a little bit more, just to see some of the examples of programs that they think are an example of good governance and being racially equitable, that would be great. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I really appreciate you taking time out, and I will forward the slides to other folks after this as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. If you want to share your slide again, Joseph, that would be wonderful. Nick, I'm assuming you didn't make your own slides, or if you did, you could.
I did make slides.
Oh, you did? Wonderful. Well, then
let me try to pull them up.
Let's go ahead. You can stop sharing. So Nick's going to go over four bills that we've been watching from a transportation equity standpoint. So thank you, Nick. And for those of you who don't know, Nick works in the policy office for the commissioners. He's one of our lobbyists.
Yes, thank you so much, Angel, for having me. Nick Robles. Hope you can see my slides and hear me okay. Let me try to put it present mode. Okay, so yeah, thank you for the introduction. Nick Robles, policy analyst at Boulder County. So yeah, just to talk about a few bills, but just to give a sense as to where we're at in the session. Today is day 92, so exactly 4 weeks left. At this point, about 200 bills / resolutions have passed both the Senate and House chambers, but there's been over 654 introduced so far. So that means 2/3 of the bills still need to go through some sort of process in these last 4 weeks if they're gonna make it into law. And I will now move to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to chat about some most pertinent to this group. So there's HB
Hey, Nick.
1328. Yeah.
Can I,
go ahead.
you're not in presentation mode. So with
Ooh,
the, yeah,
okay,
so with the
sorry.
content, it's a little hard to
Yeah,
see.
all
But
right. Let's see if that makes, okay.
there we
should
go. Thank you.
Okay. All right, yeah, and apologies for having such so much content on these slides, but just wanted to use the wording from either the fiscal note or the bill summary itself. But yes, this bill addresses NEMT, non-emergency Medicaid, non-emergency medical transportation services. So this bill would create a community advisory board within HCPF, and that will establish rules and processes for the safety and oversight of non-medical transportation services and NEMT services. It'll establish how a transportation broker must roll out their implementation, among a few other things. And of course, yeah, I'm just speaking of some of the highlights of this bill. It will also, requires that a broker or the transportation provider verify that the individuals using the transportation services are eligible members during the scheduling process. It will require that providers to provide their trip assignment rules and procedures to the State Department for approval beforehand, and that gets published to the website. And the bill requires the State Department to annually audit brokers and a random group of providers. And finally, it requires the State Department to categorize all NEMT expenditures as medical services. And it eliminates the requirement that the State Department provide transportation services as an administrative cost. So yes, so this bill, I think there's 3 bills this session that are trying to address some of the NEMT issues, but this one has bipartisan sponsorship and support. And yeah, we can see many people are supporting and some are amending. I didn't list any monitor positions, but there's also quite a few agencies that are monitoring. I'm just going to jump to the next one, unless there's any questions. There's also HB 1043, TNC discriminatory practices. So requires a transportation network company to educate drivers on laws concerning service animals. This bill also requires these transportation network companies to adopt a policy that prohibits unlawful discrimination, provide the policy to each driver on the network, and post the policy to its website. And there is currently, violations that these network companies can be assessed, but this would increase the penalty. So the penalty could go up to $1,300. And also removes the requirement that the TNC have written notice of the violation before the penalty may be assessed. Also, it would just require monthly reporting as opposed to annual reporting. Anytime that it's reported that a driver refused to provide services. And yeah, this one, sorry, I forgot to put the status of where these bills are, but yeah, all these bills have really passed out of the first committee at least. Yeah, excuse me. Okay, so now I'll speak about 2 budget related bills really quick, just because they're so closely aligned, both relate to MMOF. So multimodal transportation. So House Bill 1398. This bill would reduce the amount of money that normally goes to local multimodal projects. So MMOF, that was created in 2018, for a quick background. It's a CDOT program, and much of the funding goes towards sidewalk improvements, bike lanes, transit enhancements, and safety upgrades on main streets. So that's where some of that funding currently goes. Well, because of the current budget situation with the state, this bill 1398 would reduce the allocation for local multimodal projects. an increase for state multimodal projects. And this is because there's funding issues for bus staying, and this is the state's response to ensure that there's funding for bus staying, but it unfortunately comes at the expense of local projects. 1399, this one just passed out of Senate second hearing, and it was amended, but this bill will, or currently, yeah, there's $10.5 million every year that goes to multimodal transportation. This bill eliminates that transfer forever. So the amendment today was able to at least have the Joint Budget Committee look at it every year to ensure that if there is funding, that 10.5 million could go towards MMOF as opposed to just going to the general fund. And finally, the big bill that many are talking about, Senate Bill 150, modernizing RTD. This one has, three main components. One is producing a comprehensive analysis and planning effort for providing services to riders with disabilities. Next piece is RTD board redistricting. So we would have the Office of Legislative Legal Services and Legislative Council staff create new districts. So there'd be 5 districts as opposed to the 15 that we currently have. And it would change the board composition. The board is currently 15 elected board members. This bill would reduce that to 9 board members, 5 who are elected and 4 who are appointed by the governor. Dr. Cog would be able to submit, I think, a list of about, maybe six individuals, and the governor would choose 2 out of that. So they would have 2 more or less that came from Dr. Cog and 2 that come from the governor. And it's also going to change the compensation for board members as well. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I just quickly discussed or explained some of these bills. I'm not sure if there's times for questions.
Yeah. I know Z-Trip's on the call and they're a Medicaid provider. I don't know if you all have talked about the NEMT bill at all, Megan. It would put providers like Z-Trip, have them, they would have the opportunity to be on an oversight committee.
Yeah, I think that would be very beneficial overall to be more involved and being able to communicate in a better way than always having to go directly to the state with the issues that we run into.
Yeah, great. I know that some other organizations on the call are tracking probably the MMOF general fund transfer and then also the RTD reform bills a little bit more closely. So I don't know if anybody wants to share their perspectives on those, or I don't know if you have anything else, Nick, that you want to focus on.
Oh yeah, just appreciate everyone's time, and yeah, there's just a few weeks left. So if you have your thoughts, share them. Share them either with your delegation member or with anyone.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Nick. We appreciate all your time and we appreciate you digging deep into all these bills and flagging them when they address equitable transportation. We appreciate all your efforts.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Darcy. Darcy, Dr. Darcy Kitching finished up her PhD, what was it, 2 years ago now?
Last year.
Oh, last year. Okay, last year.
Shockingly, I know.
And
Took me a while.
She did some really amazing engagement work with youth and families. So we invited her here at the beginning of the project to kind of solicit feedback and get input and spread the word about the engagement events. And now we would love to see her results. So I'll turn it over to you, Darcy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angel. I really appreciate being invited back to this group. I came and presented on my kind of initial findings before everything was really thoroughly analyzed. And Angel, remind me how much time I have. Do I have about 20 minutes?
You have you have a half hour. Yeah. 20 to,
Fantastic. Well,
yeah, 20 to 30
yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll probably talk for 20 minutes or so, and then we can have a conversation because really I welcome your feedback. This group in particular, I think, is really aligned with the subject of my research, and Angel included the actual title of my dissertation in the agenda. Today, I'm taking a slice of that. So I have presented on my research in a lot of different ways over the last several years, and I'm now working on an article and a proposal for another project based on this research. So I'm kind of slicing and dicing it in new ways. And I wanted to try out with this group today a new approach to it and kind of a new way of discussing the findings. And so I'm eager to hear your feedback on this. So really what I'm focusing on these days is this element of family stress and how my research found that there is a lot missing for a lot of families in Boulder County. And just to give you a really quick overview of the study, it was a Boulder County-wide study with 23 transportation professionals and 44 families, which totaled about 105 people, 110 individuals from the community. And so it was really looking at the region as a whole, the county as a whole. And so, in doing that, I found some big missing pieces. So we know that, based on national research, that about 10% or more of everyday weekday school day trips are comprised of vehicle traffic, conducting school drop-offs. And so it's a really significant impact on our communities, school travel is. And over the last several decades, the number or the proportion of students walking or bicycling to school has gone down precipitously from about 41% nationally in 1969 to about 10% nationally right now. Now, Boulder is different in many ways, and Amy, can pipe up on this because I really appreciate Amy's data collection on BVSD's rates of walking and bicycling. BVSD overall sees about 30% of students walking or bicycling, and that showed up in my study as well. So about 30% of the students participating in my study were able to walk or bike at least sometimes. But what's really telling and what's really interesting is that more than half of the families in my study had this experience that they talked about in tones of resignation, that they didn't have the opportunity to really make travel choices that they would prefer, but rather were kind of forced into driving or putting their kids on a school bus or whatever, mostly driving. Most of the families in that 55% were driving their kids to school every day because they felt like there wasn't another viable option, even though they wanted a different option. And so this is really interesting. And I'm starting to kind of, really deconstruct this finding in particular. And like it says at the bottom here, this is a symptom of a system that isn't designed for young people's independent mobility at all, or even for families. We have so many things that are decoupled these days. Jobs from housing from schools, back in 1969, when 41% on average of, kids were walking or bicycling to school, they lived really close to their schools. They were going to neighborhood schools. These days, with school choice and many other factors, people are not necessarily living in the same neighborhood that their students are where their students are attending schools. So this is really, we talk often about this problem of kind of increased driving, decreased walking and bicycling as a behavioral issue, but it's not. It's a structural issue. And so my research really attempted to get at that structural problem by talking with and understanding and interviewing transportation professionals as well as students and their family members. And so this was the first study that I know of to include all three of those populations in a really equitable way. So, what Safe Routes to School, is a program. Part of the inspiration for this research was that Safe Routes to School, when I was conducting this research, was celebrating its 20th anniversary, right? And so 20 years later, the majority of kids are still being driven to school, even though we have this, national program that has funding for every state, and it operates differently in different states, but it hasn't turned the flip the switch really on that. It hasn't enabled us to have a plurality of kids walking and bicycling. So I was really interested in how, usually when we talk about Safe Routes to School, we're talking about how families can do more and how school districts can maybe widen a sidewalk or do some infrastructure change close to schools. But what we're not addressing in that research is how car-based school travel is a social practice. And it's this idea that we have both practices that we engage in every day, and we have our feelings about those capabilities. My research used this theoretical lens of the capabilities approach, and I'm layering on now this practice theory approach, which is really based on the work of Jennifer Kent at the University of Sydney. And because they're very complementary, and what they both address is the complexity of the choices that we make every day, right? How we're dealing with materials such as, cars, car-dependent streets, schools with no safe drop-off alternatives, and neighborhoods without sidewalks, right? Then we're dealing with our own kind of issues about timing and where we need to go, which are considered competencies in this practice theory approach. And, when I talk to families, they're talking about trip chaining. We're not going from A to B, we're going from A to B to C to D to E to F, right? And so there are many different things that parents and caregivers of school-age children are doing every weekday. Then there's the meaning behind all of that. So what I love about Jennifer Kent's work is that she really gets into this idea of what does it mean to be a good parent? And how do we conflate that idea with car ownership and car travel? And I think this is really important as we go forward with this kind of investigation. And I think this idea of the meanings, and also in the capabilities approach, is really called the kind of social layer of how do I feel if I have my children walk or bike? Am I still a good parent? So all of these things really have to go together in our work. So the way that I attempted to kind of understand this in my research was that I used two active methods with people in person. So we did 15 small group interview sessions, and most of these were in person. Some of them were virtual, but when I did virtual sessions, I gave people the same materials that everyone in the in-person sessions had access to. So we did we used two methods, and we used the same procedure for all the groups that participated. So we started out with this thing called Place It, which is really fun. It's a model building activity where you build a model of something that you've been prompted to build, and then you tell the story about that. So we started with this idea that people would model their earliest mobility memory and then share the story about that, and then model their ideal school or weekday trip. And they used, I included a picture here of the range of found objects. It's just a bunch of junk you put on a table and people can build with it. So this really gets people out of that analytical brain that we use when we're filling out surveys and kind of having conversations, into using your hands and doing something active and really thinking differently. And so many amazing things came out of this. So the second method that we used was called Maptionnaire, and this is one of many public participatory GIS platforms. The reason I use this particular one is because I had a partnership with somebody at Cornell who was also using this program, and so we were able to kind of go in together on the cost of it. But there are many of these public participatory GIS programs, and this one, it was interesting because it was kind of easy to use, but it was also not very easy to use, and so I ended up layering onto this so I had people, as you can see in the picture, people used tablets to complete this exercise. And for some people, those tablets were a barrier and it was challenging. And so I also had people draw maps by hand, which was another really great way to kind of get their feedback. It was also a very complex procedure that I had them do. And I'll tell you more about why I did it that way at the end. But what really came out of this, and I think the most interesting thing for this group and just going forward, is that 4 experience types came out of this research. And as I mentioned before, the majority of families express this kind of resignation. So I called it routine and resigned. Their mode choices are driven by this sense of this is what we have to do right now, not their preference. Small groups in this family, or in this research, were active and comfortable, meaning that they could just, send their kids out to walk or bike, or they walked or biked with them and everything was great. And they didn't have to think about it. The same number of families in the study also had an experience that I called precarious and fearful, and I'll get into that more in just a minute. And then kind of in between those groups was one I called rushed and stressful, where they had multiple kids, multiple schools, rigid schedules. And so the drop-off logistics and getting to school was just really, really stressful for them. And they used the word stress, that distinguished them from the other families. And this research was really intended to, it invited people into the conversation if they were interested in talking about why or why not, active travel works for them. And so you can see that, most of the families who participated were not able to travel actively on a routine basis. These categories are not definitive. They're not, things that we can really say, apply to everyone, because this was qualitative research in one area, but they are provocative and they expressed a broad range of experience that I think is really important for us to drill down on. So this routine and resigned group, this quote really kind of exemplifies part of this experience. One of the mothers who participated said, "I just want to be able to send my kids and feel like they would be okay without having me be with them all the time." And she just wanted to know that they would be safe. And this was an overarching concern, was that families did not feel safe letting their kids walk or bike the whole way, or even sometimes part of the way. Some of these families did allow their kids to walk or bike part of the way to school, but there was this overarching feeling of, oh, we just have to drive. And this was not preferred by the parents or the adults, or the parents or the students. What was also really interesting about this research is that I was able to decouple the interests of the parents or the caregivers from the interests of the students. This is something that typical surveys and methods that we use to, understand families' experiences do not get at. That's usually parents reporting on what their kids are doing. My study really looked at both sides of that puzzle, and there was a lot of misalignment within families, which was also very interesting. I'm not going to get into that. I could talk about this for days, so if you have questions, please let me know, because there's a lot to share here. But really, the implication of this particular group is that what they talked about wanting was something in between, a place where they could drop their kids, maybe, where they knew that they would be safe, but they could still make their way to work by driving. So maybe there was this intermediate space, and I'm now working on a proposal to get more deeply into that idea of what would these mobility hubs really look like. So trusted, accessible, socially animated gathering spaces where students can be dropped off, gather and then travel actively from there together. So that's provocative, and that's something that I'm working on now. So this precarious and fearful group, really interesting, and I think particularly pertinent to the values and priorities of this group, the MAC group here. These are families who were experiencing housing instability or a lack of security in their neighborhoods. They were feeling perhaps socially isolated, or they were dealing with disabilities or special needs, or their students were. And so all of these things together, they were a very distinct group on their own. And this group was primarily made up of people living in manufactured housing communities. One of these families was also living in subsidized housing, and one was formerly unhoused, living with family members. And so this was a very distinct kind of experience. And so when we're talking about interventions that we want to make to facilitate active school travel, or just opportunities for kids to have independent mobility at all, we really have to center this group and think about who's missing from any intervention that we might want to provide. And, these are families who were particularly concerned about other people in the community, about traffic danger, and about kind of projects or environmental conflicts, where people couldn't navigate, or kids couldn't navigate those easily. So like ongoing construction, for instance. And then that housing instability, and that sense of needing to be protective of their family. So I say at the bottom here that interventions designed without this group in mind will serve the already advantaged. And that's something that is really problematic in our planning process in general, is that we're kind of designing for the majority, right? And so we're missing a lot of these families. And school choice is also a really important component here, because students who were going to choice schools were driven more frequently. Of course, that school choice is really important to families. They want to be able to have choice, but that does increase the likelihood that students are being driven. And so we really need to look at that too. Where can we integrate transportation, providing transportation for school choice? And so where there are choice only schools, how can we integrate transportation options for those families, particularly families who live too far away and who don't have access to a school bus? So as I mentioned, I talked with planning professionals as well, and others in transportation. And I've listed here what they said they wanted to know, and then why they don't have that information already. My study was primarily a methodological study, meaning I was looking at how can we learn from families more effectively, so that their voices can be more integrated into planning processes. So the planners said that they really want to have consistent district-wide data on mode choice, but they didn't have that at the time of my study. Now, this is something that BVSD has integrated this over the last couple of years, and so I think that data is being collected at the district level in a different way than it was when I did my study. But there wasn't that consistent data collection across districts, and I included, of course, St. Vrain Valley School District in this study as well. They wanted to know why families travel the way that they do. And we know a lot about why people make their mode choices, about, distance and timing and all the things, but our standard methods for understanding that, for answering that question, just really don't get to the actual reasons, constraints, or aspirations behind why people do what they do, but my study did that. Student voices are also really important. Planners wanted to hear from students themselves, and there wasn't a methodology for collecting student voices consistently. This idea, so we talk a lot about the importance of quantitative data and needing numbers, and large percentages. My study was really focused on qualitative information, which means the whys and the hows behind the numbers. So that rich qualitative data, planners actually want that, because it helps them make the political case for making certain decisions. We really need to have quotes and voices and documentation of experiences to justify to our decision makers why something matters, not just statistics. And then they wanted the time and the funding to do what came out of my study. And what's really challenging for professionals is that there just isn't that much flexibility in their work plans or in their transportation master plans or in the agendas that their city councils have set for them. So and there's also this orientation to projects, which stops the data collection after a project ends. My study encourages ongoing embedded ways of collecting data with families consistently over time. So this methodology really was designed to reach everyone. I did all the things you need to do to make sure that marginalized families or diverse families are included. And my study did oversample people of color and Spanish speakers, and I was really proud of that. So we heard from people who don't typically engage with planning processes. And as I mentioned, this youth and adult data was collected together, revealing the disagreements within families that aren't easy to capture. That's really interesting. I'd be happy to share more of that information with anyone. And this procedure was validated by the professionals who were involved. So what does this mean for you? I'm at 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop after a couple more. But what does this really mean for us as a local coordinating council? What does this mean for people who are interested in transportation equity? We need to push for structural framing. We need to resist this emphasis on behavior change that really puts the burden on families and on students. This is a system design problem, and there's evidence to that. We need to demand better data collection and make sure that our data instruments and procedures are actually getting at the questions we want to answer. School choice is also an equity issue, and we need to understand who actually has access to choice in our communities. This, as I mentioned, centering this idea of the precarious and fearful. Now, we may not always call them that, but these are families who are living at the margins of our communities who don't have access to the capabilities and kind of those internal resources that families who are able to have lots of choices available to them, or they don't perceive the choices that others do, and that gets in the way of their choice making. So that's a complex idea, but what I mean is we need to center people who have limited choices. And then understand that there is latent demand. That 55% of families in my study who wanted to be able to walk or bike at least part of the way, that's a big indicator that we're not making the right decisions and that we've got systemic issues. I talk about this in terms of the housing, transportation, and education nexus. All these things go together. And then we really do need to connect transportation to housing and education. So as I mentioned, this nexus, that idea that all these things go together. So for instance, our recent Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan process, I hope that people were able to take a look at that draft plan and really think about how do we bring all these things together in a more coordinated way so that more people have access to that active and comfortable experience? So to sum up, the problem is not that families make bad transportation choices by driving everywhere, but the problem is that the system has never been designed to support their capabilities. And this idea of capabilities means the freedom to do and to be what we have reason to value. So I welcome your questions. I'd love to have a conversation. And I'm just putting this in at the very end. I know this is provocative, but what I'm going to do is send Angel this deck. My research resulted in this engagement framework, which is a 7-part, I called it the 7 I's, which is kind of based on the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School. But I won't read all of this, but basically this is a sequential procedure to really do what I did. And then there is a set of questions that go with this as well. So I will stop sharing and we can have a conversation. I welcome your feedback.
Thank you so much. It looks like Jen has a question.
Please, Jen. Hi.
Or comment.
Good to see you.
Hey, Darcy, just wanted to say, great to see you. Love your presentation. Definitely agree we need a better system for non-possessive families. Just wanted to comment that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that. Questions. How does this resonate with you? I mean, what is your own experience? If you have kids and you've, you're kind of dealing with this dynamic of school and family travel, how does this resonate with you? Yeah, Megan.
Okay, so I I want to talk with you offline at some point, but yeah, I have 3 kids, 3 different levels of school. They all walk and bike. And I definitely see like the whole idea of like the community peer pressure, and I got peer pressured in the right way, right? But people have the other community peer pressure to do it in the wrong way. And I think that that helps build up. I also believe that by allowing the kids to have that freedom to bike and walk at those ages will just continue to allow them to see other ways to mode their own transportation. And it creates a freedom that I think is just so important. That empowerment is so important for kids and allow them to think about alternate ways throughout their life then, and does not just rely on a car to get them wherever they need to go. The thing that why I want to talk to you potentially offline is the consistent discussion of school consolidation will just increase that distance and then will decrease the amount of people walking and biking to school. And I think it goes back to that structure and that strategy and that planning that needs to be put into the thought processes when those decisions are being made overall. But I could talk with you for hours. I'm on some strategic planning committees that,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
thank you. I welcome that. I would love to meet with you. I think you're also involved in the Growing Up Boulder committees, right, Megan?
I'm not
I think I've
on.
seen you on this.
I don't
You're
think.
not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's on like
I
all the LCCs.
Yeah.
all the LCCs. Oh, great. That's so great. Well, and I wanted to mention, you mentioned, so you with your 3 kids, great job on being active and comfortable. This is also good for you, right? As a parent.
That's the idea, the whole thing where you talk about the inequitability of
Yeah.
school of choice. And I think a lot of times, and this is something I use when I'm talking more on the school district level of things, is that people think, oh, it's only the people that are low income that can't school a choice, but it's not that. It's 2 working parents cannot school a choice. And then, so I'm also a huge advocate of neighborhood schools because that allows my children to get to and from their extracurriculars, be part of their community, be part of the other kids within our neighborhood. And it's funny though, because you also see, I've got my youngest is in 5th grade, right? And she's been walking in to and from school her whole life because she's got older sisters and we've had a whole community that goes to and from, but she's at the point where her older sisters aren't walking with her anymore. She gets to be the leader of other people in our neighborhood that walk home, and those are those neighborhood kids that it's their first kid versus the 3rd kid, and there's such a growth that happens within that diversity. So
absolutely. That is fantastic. Well, parental stress is the theme of a paper that I'm working on with my dissertation advisor, because exactly what you just spoke to is like there's so much that happens when we can let go of that obligation to chauffeur our kids, right? And I'm in the same position. I have I have a 13-year-old, but I'm very fortunate to live in a place where the elementary school was one way and the middle school and the high school are another way. And he's been walking on his own since 3rd grade, and it's so great. And that frees me up, right? And it's really interesting because those of us who kind of grew up that way and like made the choice to live in that kind of environment, I mean, there's a lot of privilege to that. But there's also opportunities that we can spread through the creation of things like mobility hubs. And so I'm working on that research with some National Laboratory of the Rockies researchers, and kind of looking at how do we really learn with and from communities how to create those structures so that we can introduce at least, some kind of spatial element where families can feel safe leaving kids to travel actively on their own for at least the part of the way. So I think it's a really important thing as we're looking at the housing and affordability, school consolidation, all that stuff that you mentioned. That's just creating more pressure and making it harder for families to enable their kids to be active and comfortable. And so we're increasing that rushed and stressful category, which is not what we want to be doing in our communities, right? And at the same time, we're talking, the national level, the Department of Transportation is talking about being family friendly and really focusing on family first priorities. And it's like their policies are not doing that, and so we have to remind them what it takes to create this to decrease parental stress, to increase children's independence is community structures, right? Community structures, affordable housing in proximity to schools, and other, places that can supplement and complement that that opportunity.
And one more thing, because you did talk about safety. So my kids do go to Title I schools. So like we definitely live in an area that there is a good group of different socioeconomics. And I think that there is a way that can be presented to all the levels of people that are going to school to help advocate for biking and walking and creating a community aspect that makes it feel like they can do it. So
absolutely, safety is that number one concern of parents, and so we have to address that, and we have to address the cultural norms. Yeah. Thank you, Megan.
Well, yeah, I know that we're at the end of the meeting, and there's like wonderful comments in the chat. So I want to make sure that you get a chance to look at those, Darcy. But thank you so much for coming and talking to us. And there's a lot of thoughts here, I think. And I think just those, trade-offs that families are making with like the school and walking and biking are really thoughtful. But yeah, we'll definitely schedule you another time once you have like another article or something like that. But thank you all. Our next meeting is going to be on May 20th, right? Yeah, May 20th. And so we look forward to seeing you then, but it's good to see so many faces today. Thank you all.
Thank you.